Hey, and now we're live. Hey guys, welcome back to another Plasticast. I'm here joined with Megamus
What's up?
and Sideburn.
What's up?
And today we're going to talk about different types of robots other than just transformers that actually transform and turn into a different type of mecha. Um, we did talk about GoBots a little while back, and I know Brett wasn't here for that episode because I know he has a lot of insight that I don't believe Don actually had as well. But I do know that Cyburn's seen a few of the monster bots too. We kind of talked a little bit about the creaturey type of stuff that's more in line with kind of Beast Wars type of thing, and some of the Rock Lords and such. So, Megamus, tell us what you know about the crazy machine robo GoBot like crossover stuff. What do you know about it?
Well, other than the fact for the price point, you get more bang for your buck. Fight me. I don't care. You get more. You get more diecast. You get, more interesting transformations and everything. At least early on in the 80s, because everything was pulled over for Transformers and GoBots was pulled over from one main line. And they were good. I mean, you could get, I can't remember how many there are. There's like 20 something different ones in the first series, and all of them were price point at like less than $5. You know, so you could go and buy an Optimus Prime for $25, and it looks cool, and it's got all these gadgets and all this stuff. Or you could buy 5 to 6 GoBots, and you already started your little fleet of renegades or guardians. And yes, that's what I'm going to call them. I'm not going to go with the machine robo terms. And to me, I liked them. I did. I had GoBots along with my Transformers. And like I said before, my Transformers, my first ones were knockoffs because I couldn't afford them. So to me, a price point was very important. So, with that being said, I got a lot of the GoBots, and I didn't start collecting them. I collected some, Transformers, like I said, most of the knockoffs and everything, based upon the show. Well, then I started watching GoBots. All right, so what did I buy? Whatever was on the show that week, that's what I bought. So you had your staples, your leader one, your scooter, your turbo, your cycle, your Coptor. And then they started introducing more and more, and you'd see them on the show. And it wasn't until later that then I started finding out that they were machine robo, and they had other ones that were never on the show that were like way cool, and then they had some that actually combine, and I'm not talking about the power suits. I'm talking about they had 2 of them that would combine and make one robot, and that was in the machine robo line. And so I found out there was more and more, Puzzler, I didn't know about him, but you talk about a super cool toy that combined, in my opinion, way better than any Transformer. Had articulation, didn't have parts, wasn't a parts former, and he looked cool.
Same thing
Then they
with
came out, then
Monstrous.
also
Monstrous.
monstrous, and I was like, oh my god, this thing is awesome. Then you start deep diving into it, and you find out in Japan, oh, guess what? His name was Satan 6, and he had these darker colors, and oh my god, he looks so cool. So cool.
In my opinion, Satan 6 looked a lot better than Monstrous.
Oh, absolutely. A lot of earthy colors. But then, we had play sets. Yeah, I remember what was the name of the the Guardian's ship. I can't remember the name of it. But just the legs folded up. You put it up on top, and it was a command base.
It's basically, I think they just called it the command headquarters. I have two of them.
Okay.
But yeah,
Okay.
they're amazing.
Well, then you go to Japan, and they had several different ones. Different ones, that would open up, and they actually had platforms and stuff, and you could slide. They had so much more play feature.
The
that was-
machine battle base.
Yeah, and then what did Transformers have? Well, we got this cardboard thing you can put together. We got that going for us.
Well,
We have a city metroplex. Well, you can't really put anyone in it, because Micromasters weren't out yet. So he's kind of out of scale. But yeah, that's our play set.
I mean, the play features that they decided to do of Metroplex was just plug a bunch of the leader bots onto it to expand the base, which works.
Well, and
but
that's the other
not
funny
really.
thing. A lot of people think that he was supposed to be part of the Gestalts because of the plug-in features. In my opinion, I think it was they talked about doing that. I think, and I don't quote me, but in my opinion, it was something that was scrapped, and it was never really played upon. I mean, I don't know of any box artwork that actually showed, the aerial bots plugged into the shoulders and everything. And it was never done on the show.
Well, I think.
So it wasn't a play feature that was actually exploited.
Well, the thing is, from what I've gathered and from all the research I've found out dealing with that whole Scramble City thing they did, that's actually a part of Diaclone, because those were invented right before the Diaclone brand kind of just went to Takara and has, like, it went into more Transformers versus just being its own thing, from what I gathered. So the prototype was that, and they just went with what was the prototype. I don't think they, like you said, ever expanded on any of that.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. Originally, it was designed for those to attach to it, but it was never really talked about. It wasn't in the instruction booklet and all that, and so that was an idea that was just kind of pushed to the side. But getting back to GoBots, I have pros and cons. My pros were, I think they were great. Price point was great. You got die cast and all that. Now I'll go for the cons. Okay? And I'll flip back to Transformers here in a minute. I hated the fact that they did not come with any weapons. They came with nothing other than in the show. They shot out of their hands, and I thought that was lame. In Transformers, Bumblebee had a gun. And then you're like, oh, wait a minute. Toy didn't. None of them did. So
Well,
that was a price cut. That was it was a takeover from, micro change and all that, but I get it. And it wasn't until you saw, like, Prime, Jazz and all that they had actual accessories and everything that really, really got me going. Which the price point was higher, and I kind of leaned towards those. And then they came out with Super GoBots. And I was like, all right, here we go. We got some deluxe GoBots that are going to be right up against these Transformers I've been buying. Sorry about the dogs.
Hey, we like dogs.
I know, but they're noisy.
Well,
Anyway, and then they have the Super GoBots, and guess what? They didn't have accessories either.
they
They're
were
giving
just,
these neat boxes with the foam and everything. You open them up, and you're like, oh yeah, I'm ready to go. And I mean, I can't remember his name, the VW Bug. I mean, he had a little roof rack. I mean, they had little bits here or there, but as far as like actual accessories and everything, no, they didn't. And I get it. Someone's going to jump in there and talk about the fire truck, the GoBots fire truck. It did have a little gun. Occasionally they did, but for the most part they didn't. And then they made the cartoon. They're like, how are we going to solve this? Oh, comes out of their hands. Comes out of their hands.
well, I mean, you got to think these things were invented before the cartoon even came around, and
Right, so they're building a show around the toy, which, guess what? That's what Transformers did.
Yep. And it was based off well, they got kind of rough ideas of what to do with them with the Diaclone comic book from back then. But, I mean, they weren't all like good guys. That's the thing. Like all the Autobots, some of them fought against each other. So it it's a different world on the Diaclone side when it comes to Transformers, which personally I kind of found it a little more intriguing, but that's just me because I'm a little weird like that. But what about Rock Lords and the Combiner Rock Lord thing? What do you think of those?
Fossil. What's it called? Fossil something.
The one that's, I guess it was almost like a dinosaur or something. It was like three of them that combined together. It was really interesting.
Yeah, hang on 1 minute.
And now, do you guys know much about because a big thing, Transformers and GoBots was that we, America borrowed a lot of them from Japan, where they were proper mecha, anime.
Mm-hmm.
Or I guess I don't know if Diaclone really had anime, but Machine Robo, from the looks of it seems like it was a proper mecha, where you had because usually the sort of the defining characteristics of mecha compared to GoBots and Transformers is that the robots are typically piloted. Which, if you look at your old G1 toys, most of those had Diaclone drivers and stuff like that, right?
Correct.
That's kind of the interesting thing about all, especially the where we started in Transformers, is we borrowed so much from Japanese mecha, including Sunbow, and borrowing animation style. A lot of the original animation style was borrowed from Japanese.
Yeah, it's actually, the funny part about that is some of the early commercials. And even for the commercial for the first Transformers comic by Marvel Comics, use stills from existing Diaclone ads. If you look at the originals, when they talk about Transformers #1 coming out, Megatron has a dark domed head, and then the cannon it looks different and everything, and it's more towards the commercial they use to sell P-38.
Mm-hmm.
Which
it's personally, just a hot take on Megatron. I think they should have picked that Browning mold instead of the P-38. Whatever that little smaller pistol was, I can't remember exactly what model that was, but the Browning, that would have made a better Megatron. Just because it was a little more... I don't know. I don't know. I personally liked it better just because he was easier to transform and wasn't as floppy.
They should have worked him into the storyline and made him an actual... The Browning is Transformers, okay? There is a Browning that's Transformers. It's Japan only. Mm-hmm. But he was never in the cartoons as far as the originals. He was never in the comics as far as the original Marvel run. And my understanding is that Hasbro didn't want too many firearms. They were like, well, Megatron's kind of important. We'll let that slide. And then later on, they even kind of snuck in a futuristic firearm, Shockwave.
Did you know?
But they kind of kept away from that. If you notice, they really kept away. I mean, otherwise, you've got Blaster, right? Hmm? You've got Soundwave, right? A tape recorder and a radio. Okay. Well, you've got Megatron, I'll use the word pew. Where's our Autobot? Because they were like, no, too much. No.
Well, back when they were trying to choose figures from Diaclone, one of the first things they looked at was called Diattacker, that they were going to use for Megatron instead, which was that space jet. I personally think that would have been awesome if you think about that being an actual the colors of Megatron.
Talking about.
I think that would have been amazing to see.
I know the toy you're talking about. I don't ever remember reading anything that they even talked about that. All right. I know that in that line they had the Diachrome, and the only reason I knew that is because Trailblazer came in blue and then these different colors, and there are early mock-ups of the Hasbro's employees that were sent those, and that's why some of the early when they changed the colors and everything, you'll find Hoist and Trailbreaker with swapped heads in ads in the right color, because I mean they get these toys, they don't know what they are. How do we change it? Well, we'll change the color or do this, that, and the other. But they didn't know about the sculpt. They didn't know that they were different. This, that, and the other. All early working stuff, but we're kind of getting off the topic on that.
Yeah.
Same thing with GoBots, though. I mean, they just took them and redid the colors, and and I got to give it to them though, because they actually did it first. So, if someone was to ask you, Hasbro and it was Tonka, who did the first recolors? You got repaints. You did repaints to make money.
Tonka.
GoBots did.
Yeah, because they recolored Leader One in blue, and I've also seen him in red.
No,
I don't
no,
know.
the red is country of origin different, Japanese or European or whatever. But as far as what actually came to the U.S., first one was gray. Psykill was his red, blue, and silver, and then they came out with the second series, and you had a blue Leader One, and then you had a gorgeous black and green Psykill.
Yeah.
And then of course you had Crasher, went from black to white. Those are second series.
And the white one was actually based off of an actual Machine Robo, correct? Because I think that was the original colors was white, and then they changed it to black.
It was based off of it was based off of a real race car that was popular.
Yeah,
in some
Daytona.
area.
It was a Porsche Daytona.
I don't remember, but it had something to do with. Let's face it, it was marketing. So they recolored them and did this, that, and the other. And I'm like, all right, cool. You know what I'd kill for? A recolor of Scooter.
Yeah, that would have been interesting.
Give him something crazy. I don't care.
But as for the red Leader One, that was a European thing, you said?
It was either European or Japanese only. I can't remember. I've seen them. But then there's also a company that knocked them off. They did multiple different colors also.
Yeah. Well, there was a lot of knockoffs of GoBots, like tons of them.
Sure there were. And then some of them would just be so close, but it would be like the stickers. And if you really looked at the stickers, they would be like advertisements and weird stuff like that. So if anyone was trying to get like all the variations of, let's just say, the 84, 85 line of Transformers, it would be far easier than to try and get all the variations of the GoBots in that same era.
Yeah, because there's a bunch.
Just so much of it.
Well, I mean, if you're going to look at just, like you're saying, like even like American side, it's hard enough. But if you start adding the Machine Robo recolors, you had the fire truck that was yellow in Machine Robo versus red. I think the garbage truck was a different color too.
There was so many.
Flytrap.
I can't remember. But I can tell you this much. I mean, like something as simple as, I think his name was Apollo, which is the shuttle. Sorry, rocket. It's not a shuttle.
The Saturn V rocket.
Yeah, it was a rocket. There's two variations on that, and it's only stickers. One had a American flag on it, and the other one had, I'm trying to remember, it had a different symbol on it. And that's because, they had mailaways, they had different, where it came from and all that. So, something as simple as stickers, there's your variation. So they had multiple different variations. But since we're talking about GoBots, and I know we need to transition because we're talking about multiple things, but for me, the thing that got Transformers ahead of GoBots, and that's why everyone says, well, GoBots are like the stepchild of Transformers, even though GoBots came first. That's beside the point. I say no. I mean, they didn't have things going on for them. You know what they didn't have? They didn't have marketing, and they didn't have the idea to put a backstory. And when they wrote the bios for Transformers, and then released the cartoon, and then released the comic, that just solidified the lore. GoBots, they had a cartoon that was made for the ages of 3 to 7.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. They weren't backed by comics.
Yeah, and Tonka, I mean, Tonka was a traditionally, like, you kind of think of them as a very, very young kid's toy, right?
It was a kid's toy. You had Tonka toys. Why do you think they call them Tonka toys? That's what they were.
Which is kind
Even though by today's standards, some of those metal Tonka toys would just blow parents' minds now because they're metal. They're sharp metal.
Well,
that's what it was.
Here's a funny thing. This just happened to me today when I was at the comic shop doing my filming. This guy brings in a road grader, Tonka road grader, but it's decked out like Mad Max. So my shop owner's like, did somebody customize this thing? What is this thing? And they're called Steel Warriors. What happened is Tonka, during the Road Warrior phase, decided to just take that road grader, paint it black, and attach a bunch of plastic parts on it, throw an action figure in there, and there you go, Road Warrior. And they did this with several vehicles, which is funny because, you know, it's supposed to be, like Sideburn was saying, geared toward kids, but then you got this thing that's like, okay, we're just going to kill everything that gets in the way.
Okay, so why would you do that? Why would you take a kid's toy and make it marketable for an older audience? Hello? To sell it.
Exactly.
You've already got the molds, you've already got the toys, repaint it, change it, push it out, make some more money. Absolutely.
So speaking about repaints and recolors and reuses, what about Macross? Everybody,
Macross.
Macross. Like, people talk about Macross and you talk about Robotech, and some people were like so confused on this subject. Sideburn, I know you have a Jetfire because you bought one at one of the cons. Mm-hmm. What is your take on that thing?
I mean, it's still an amazing toy even today. I mean, it's not got a ton of articulation, but if you don't pick up one of those old Veritechs and just fall in love with it, like, I don't think you enjoy robots.
All right,
they're so much fun.
Two things. One, I'm going to butcher the name big time. I'll tell you right now, I'm going to butcher it. But that mold started out with Takatomi or Takatowa, what it owned the rights to the Veritech figure. That's the 155 scale Veritech figure. It's what you all know as Jetfire. He didn't start off as Jetfire. He didn't start off as Robotech. He was owned by this company, and they sold toys. They didn't sell cartoons. They sold toys. And then what happened was Bandai bought the rights to it. So Bandai started distributing it. And then they started to do a cartoon, Macross, that hit really well in Japan. So in the US they were like, hey, we need a cartoon with some robots in it. And they got to be able to change. What's that called? Transform. That's it. You got to be able to do that, and all this. And they're like, well, we got this jet that turns into a robot, and he also does this little jet walking thing. What do you mean? What are you talking about? No, it's called the Gerwalk mode. I don't care what you call it. Yeah, that's fine. Do that. And they're like, all right, this is it. And then they worked it into the show, and then there was actually 3 different shows. And if you wonder why like Robotech changes so dramatically between Macross, Southern Cross, all the it's because they were separate shows that had nothing to do with each other.
Yeah, because it was Macross, Mospita. I can't remember what the third one is. What was the third one?
It was the Robotech Masters, which had the alphas and the betas and all that, but they were separate shows, but they married them together with adequate dubbing, working things out, cutting and pasting. I mean, literally, you're talking about Photoshop 1.0 back in the 80s, and they worked it all together. But in case anyone wants to know, your Jetfire is a 155 scale Veritech that was made for a toy that was transplanted to Macross, that was then stolen by Hasbro and used as Jetfire. And I use the word stolen only because evidently they had some problems with that, and they actually got sued, and that's how
30
Bandai
years.
got it back.
Yep, and that's why
30 years of Harmony Gold.
Harmony. Well, that's the other thing. A lot of people don't understand that either. So the figures were brought out. Okay, they had figures for all the Robotech figures. Well, not all of them, but they had a select few of them. You know, you had your Rick Hunter, your Lisa Hayes, you had your Rand, you had all that, and blah blah blah, and then of course the elusive Lunk, which if anyone doesn't know what that is, fight me again. And then they were like, we're doing these toys. We have this partnership with Harmony Gold. We're going to put them out and this, that, and the other. And then Matchbox is like, we can do that for you. And we can license it under this cartoon you have called Robotech. And that's why you have two different card variations. And actually, the figures are different. Accessories are different between them. They're different.
the Veritech and Robotech doesn't actually transform because they started one, but they had gotten sued, so they had to stop. So it only does Gurwalk mode. It doesn't go any further, which is kind of funny.
And it doesn't even really do a good Gurwalk mode.
No, it's gutted.
Yeah,
and
it is.
That would have been an amazing toy. That would have been so cool because you're able to actually put a figure in it, like Sideburn was talking about, piloted robot, not a
Okay, now I'm not going to talk about the stuff that came later because they did other things. Okay, so then what did they focus on? So they focused in on the Spartan X and all the ones that didn't transform, but that they could replicate identical versions without any transformation. And then we move on to the Southern Cross era, and they had the hover tank, and they were able to buy that mold and replicate it that a figure could fit into it, which the Veritech that they talked about would have been able to do. If you look at the hover tank and how the figure still fits into it when it forms into what they call that I don't know. It's not robot. It's robot form, but they called it something else. And they were going to do that with the Veritech that you're talking about that they gutted. Mm-hmm. And I just man, you talk about a missed opportunity. I mean, let's face it. Who wouldn't want a bloated Jetfire? Because that's what it would look like, a bloated Jetfire. I
mean, the toy was so cool.
And if you look at the connections and everything, you could see where they were going with the same assembly as the Bandai Jetfire mold, but they bloated it so the figure would fit in the cockpit.
It's all because Harmony Gold.
Well, it's all because of money.
Yeah,
licensing of money. That's all it is. Okay, but
kind of
a little backstory on the Robotech, though. To me, and if you were asked me to list my favorite toys of the '80s, it would be a kind of a tie between Transformers and Robotech. But if you was to ask me what had the better cartoon, 150% Robotech. It was way better. It was, to me, it was a kid's soap opera. That's all it was. And it just got you, I mean, I remember running home from school. I got to see what happens. Got to see what happens next. And you were hooked. And then you look at Transformers, and when you go from one episode to the next, and they don't have anything to do with each other. Nothing. It's like, hey, Prime or Megatron, last episode, man, he kicked your butt. You don't remember that? Nope.
It took America. It was in the '90s when they really started taking, I feel
Continuity.
like, animated series more seriously, and continuity more seriously.
Correct.
Because up until that point, it was just let's face it, they were very expensive toy commercials.
Exactly. But if you look at Robotech, they did it from the beginning.
Well, yeah, and that's where anime and in Japan it was always like, because everything leading up, like, if you go into the big one, like the big mecha series that kind of really cemented mecha was Gundam, and Gundam is a space geopolitical, horrors of war story, and it's a little bit of what I mean. I watched Robotech as an adult, and I thoroughly. It's such a good show, but it has a lot of
It
has a lot of very like adult themes in it. It's not like explicit or anything like that,
Well,
but it's
I mean,
very serious themes in it. And
think
it's
about think about the
Let
SDF-1. Just that ship alone, when it transforms, the entire city just falls apart and people die from this thing just transforming.
Well, I get it, but I'm talking about the ultimate theme. So if you actually look at the ultimate theme of just Macross, okay, you talk about adult topics. Think of it this way: it's a love story between Rick and Meme, to wherein Lisa gets Rick.
it's a
And
you
you're
have
like,
a love triangle.
exactly. And you're like, I watched it and I was like, I want, and then they got the girls in there going, hey, I hope Lisa gets him or Meme gets whatever. But then you go back years later and you're like, dude, this stuff should have been on Jerry Springer stuff.
It's they
it really was.
They took something that because I imagine in Japan it's really was more focused towards young adults, right? Sort of that,
Well, if you
high school
if
age
you look,
sort of things.
I've never really taken the actual Japanese dub individual series because, like I said, they weren't written to be put together. And I think when they did marry them all together, they put this continuing theme of love and connections.
I don't know if you slice them up. Like the first series, which is everything to do with what would be just Macross. I think they would line up. I'm not 100% sure, but I think they mostly would line up. Like, I don't know if they really changed the story all that much. I would have to really go into the dub.
It did a little bit, because then you add in Japanese traditions and stuff like that kind of didn't.
Yeah,
young viewers over here wouldn't understand. So they changed all that. But the simple fact that they took, I mean, you have what's her name? Max and Miria. All right. So you're talking about two different cultures, two different planets, everything. And then they get together, and at the very end, they have a child. And then all of a sudden, they have this new show called Southern Cross, and they make it their child. All right, there's the connection. And throughout the whole Southern Cross, they have this fight. It's an internal battle because the Earth has been, depleted and everything, and they have this, wasn't the Invid, what was it? Zentradi, Robotech Masters. You have the Robotech Masters coming, and what's the Robotech Masters? What's that got to do with the Zentradi? Well, they had to kind of force fit those together. And then you move forward past that, and then you go to, what is it? The last portion. My brain's farting here.
I don't remember those as well as I remember the first part.
Well, and at the very end, you had the Earth is depleted, and you have this new force called the Invid, which the Invid was brought upon from the Robotech Masters. It's a new force, but it's still the same. They're wanting to conquer the Earth for the protoculture. That's it. And how do they fit that to the original? Well, every once in a while they keep talking about Rick Hunter bringing reinforcements to help them. And then they even went, well, they got the STF-3 or SDF-3. What happened to 2? Well, that one crashed. So he built a new one, and it was a way to bring them all together like a full circle, so that they all made one show. But they really weren't. They were 3 separate shows. Today, that would be like, and we didn't even talk about this, but Shogun Warriors. What is it? Mazinger Z.
Yeah,
Mazinger, Grandizer,
Grandizer.
Getter.
Okay.
Got a robo. Yeah.
Okay. Well, all of a sudden, guess what? They're all connected, and the show that you build about 3 of them has to connect, and that's what they did. By the way, Grandizer was the best.
Well, they kind of did that too with.
Grandizer.
That's what they did a lot, and especially in the 80s and 90s, because they kind of did that with Voltron, right? They kind of did that with.
I disagree, because you tell me where the first Voltron had anything to do with the Lion Voltron.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I didn't
They
really
never
mean
really
it
connected
much
them.
like that as much as taking like the something from Japan and sort of morphing it into something for American audiences.
Yeah, but
Maybe
they
not
didn't
so
do
much
that.
smashing everything together.
No, I get it, but they did. I mean,
Yeah.
they literally. I still remember this. I remember when I was growing up, we would watch. One of the things I would watch is Voltron. Okay, and it was the one where all the vehicles formed together.
Daruger, Vehicle Voltron.
Okay. I watched that show, and you watched it all the way to the end, and then the next day, it was the Lion one starting over.
Go Lion.
And I'm like, yeah, but for a kid, it said Voltron. I'm waiting for Voltron. What is this? And they never really explained it. They just started it over.
Well, you also have the third one, which is Gladiator Voltron, which is the 3 that combine.
If it had a cartoon, I never saw it.
I think it was only because it's known by Abagus in Japan. So I'm not. I believe there was
a name for the first one.
Yeah.
It was called Voltron, but it was called Vehicle Voltron or whatever. That came later, but both of those, the Lions and the vehicles, when you looked on the TV guide, it was Voltron.
Yeah, they didn't mash them. They didn't try to make them like.
No, they didn't. It was like a restart.
But yeah,
it was like a restart.
They basically just said, "This is Voltron." Also, this is Voltron.
Right. So remember, as a kid, I'm watching this, and then the next week, I'm like, "What the hell is this?"
Hmm?
And they really didn't tie up the loose ends on the first one. So I'm like, I'm ready to see what's going to happen next. Nope, it's done. We're starting with this.
And now, see, I wish I had, because in my childhood, what I would have had that was something similar, but maybe a little less so, was like Power Rangers. You know, they took
It's
they
funny
took all
you
these
say that.
Sentai series and then
Mhm.
they made a continuous Power Ranger um like
Conglomerate is what it is.
series, right? Yeah. Like,
All
and
right.
I don't know if Sentai. I don't know if Sentai. I feel like Sentai probably also kind of had a continuous. I haven't watched any
I don't know.
Sentai.
I've never gotten
Sentai
into
did
it, but
have a
I see what you're
continuous one,
saying.
yes.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I see what you're saying. So I'll say this. First of all, I am sorry, and I'm not sorry because you're younger, that you weren't around to see this transition like I did, because it's really interesting. If you were able to go back, still keep your youth, of course, and see this, it was very weird how they did these things. And then for me, I have my kids, them growing up, they watch Power Rangers, and I see this same thing. You'll get this group, and then when that story is done, they're like, "All right, we're gonna give powers to this group," and it starts over again. Now, to me, that made sense. It meant that the Power Rangers theme could be put upon different people at different times, and it's all okay. And it made sense. When you talk about Voltron, and that was the difference. At one point, they called it Voltron Force. I was like, okay, that makes
Mhm.
different. It makes it simple because when they say Voltron, Defender of the Universe, and then he goes away, and someone new comes, a new robot comes out, and they go Voltron, Defender of the Universe. And you're like, well, what happened to the last Defender? Why do we have another one? You know,
They
as
upgraded.
opposed to this is Voltron, he defends this area. This is Voltron, he defends this area or this timeline, whatever. And that would have made more sense, in my opinion.
Well, I can tell you when it came to a show writing aspect, it was much harder to write Vehicle Voltron because there's so many characters. Because you have a character for each vehicle, which is, was it 12 vehicles that combine? Versus
Dude,
writing for
do you have
5.
any idea how much reused video or footage and sound tape they used? Why do you think when the Black Lion merges, he says, and I'll form the chest and head?
Hmm?
Is because in the original, the head is flying down when he forms the chest, and then the head connects, and he says, and head. But it lined up, so they used it. It's the same voice.
Yep. Very true. But I mean,
And by the way, Peter Cullen also did the intro for that.
oh yeah, he did. And the thing is,
Another connection
the
to
American
Transformers,
version,
guys.
though,
There you go.
the American version of Lion Force or Lion Voltron,
Voltron.
everybody knows as
Just Voltron.
Voltron here in the States.
Just Voltron.
It's
Yeah, that was
it's
Voltron to
actually a
me.
lot different. The dialogue's different. It's a little more serious tone over in Japan. I personally liked the what was it, that Netflix redo they did of it? I personally liked that series.
I didn't watch anything after that. All right.
Yeah, the one after the one they did for the Netflix series was actually very, very, very well written, and pretty much knocked it out of the park. Did you see that one, Sideburn?
No, I haven't watched it. I've heard good things about the first several seasons of it, and then I haven't heard bad things about later seasons. I just heard that it kind of started to get, maybe a little more, like not so much fell off. I've heard that it started to just maybe get a little routine or something like that. But
It felt a little rushed toward the end, but personally, I think they ended it fine.
that happens a lot.
I mean,
Let me ask you something. And it was just something that was popping in my head because it had to do with character placement. And I could be totally off. And if you guys think I'm wrong, correct me because I'm going on the fly on this. But 80s cartoons, you had the main cast, the action dudes. All right, let's go back to like He-Man. You had He-Man, Man-at-Arms, all this, and then you had Snarf, comic relief. Okay? Then let's go to...
Snarf was Thundercats, by the way. You're thinking Orko.
Orko. Well, I was getting to... I missed it. And then you had Thundercats. Thundercats, you had the same thing. And then you had Snarf, comic relief. Okay? Robotech. Okay? The other thing was you always had a damsel in distress.
Yeah,
you always had a comic relief. Then you look at like Robotech, and you had at the last portion you had Marlene. Okay, Marlene was the damsel in distress, and then you had Lunk, the tough mechanic.
Mm-hmm.
But if you watched it, he got all the end punchlines. He was the joke. He was the comic relief.
I mean, you have to have comic relief when it comes to this stuff. I think it was great when they did that.
As a kids show, they just kind of had to push that whole. Well, we got to put some comedy in there. This was before they had to do the. Well, it has to have a point. It has to, be educational. Where you got the knowing is half the battle and all that crap. So I mean, it's just weird. You if you really think about the shows of the 80s, they were peg-holed into or should I say pigeonholed into all these certain things. You had to have this, you had to have that, you had to have the good versus evil. No one dies. Good versus evil. You had to learn a lesson, and you had to have some comic relief.
But then when you go to look at the Japan versions, a lot of them were a lot more darker
they didn't have
and
that
different.
Stuff. Well, they didn't have the same restrictions.
Hmm?
So it's tough because I've done it with some of them. But if you take your actual cartoons, any of them, if they originated from Japan and you watch the originals, and sometimes it's tough, but you're going to get a whole different story.
Well, it's like
it will not be the same thing as what you remember. Guarantee it.
It's kind of like we were talking about the GoBots cartoon, right? Well,
Right.
if you look at the Machine Robo cartoon that Sideburn was referring to earlier, it's a completely different tone.
Absolutely.
A lot of them are completely different robots. They look different because they have more combiners actually in Machine Robo than they did in GoBots. And like talking about combining things, one of the weirdest combining things I'm absolutely infatuated with. Love this thing. I don't have a model kit of it yet. I really want to get one. But that is the RX-7 that can combine with the G-Fighter. It's the most nonsense thing out of Gundam. But it's great. It's literally a crazy combining robot with a tank or a jet, or heck, you got a robot flying around with a jet portion on the bottom, kind of like Grandizer, which is hilarious.
You totally lost me all the way up until you said Grandizer.
Okay, Grandizer combines with the UFO, right?
I understand that. The
Well,
other
you got a
portion I
Gundam. Think of this. You got a Gundam. You know what a Gundam looks like. The
Yeah, it's a
RX-7 is the
little
most
model
popular one. Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was just a model kit.
It's not just a... No.
I don't know.
They're Gunpla. But the
know,
RX-7, he's actually holding one up right now.
Yeah, it's a model kit. I've seen
Think
that
of it
before.
this way. Waist up is basically sticking out of a gigantic jet rear end. It's
Like
hilarious.
a girl walk mode.
Not really, the opposite way. Because it doesn't have legs.
No, girl
It's
walk
just
is,
arms
is
and a
legs
head.
with a jet on top and some arms.
Well, this is a robot with a jet on bottom.
Yeah.
Oh, like
It's-
a sled.
Yeah. It's great. I personally think it's probably one of the coolest looking Gundams. I know some people absolutely
I know is
hate
that
that
they did
thing,
way,
but I love it. I think
they
it's
did
so
it way
dumb.
they did it
but I
way
love
better in Robotech when the Invid jumped on the little sled and flew around,
Well,
which is actually reminiscent of Flash Gordon. But I'm not even going to go into that.
okay, here's a funny thing. Everybody here knows who Star Saber is. When Star Saber, isn't combined in his super mode, he rides on the back of the jet flying around. That's what the RX-7 does with this G-Fighter. He does the same thing. It's so funny.
I don't care
Well,
for
and
that.
that's where
I denounce that.
a lot of the Japanese, I feel a lot of the Japanese G1, I think, really started to take a lot of inspiration from Mecha, especially
You mean they stole it?
well, kind of. I mean, the big thing was in Japan, like sentient robot, sentient robots weren't as big, right? They were really big into the mecha. So when you had like the Headmaster Juniors and stuff like that, they went to something to try to make it seem a little more like a
Humanistic.
mecha, and a little more like mecha, a little less like the sentient robots.
Master Force is the best. Love it. Just because it's a guy that does this that turns into, has like a power suit or something, Like, come on. Who doesn't like Jinrai? I mean, that's the thing. That's what Sideburn's getting at. It's Jinrai. It's you got a dude that turns into a part for a robot to pilot it. It's completely different. It's not an autonomous thing. Doesn't have a life of its own. It is a power suit, kind of like the GoBot power suits that some people didn't understand.
You are totally losing me on this stuff.
The GoBot powered suits, grungy, the Guardian.
The other stuff, I don't know.
You haven't. If you watched any about the Master Force stuff.
Yes.
Yeah. That's what I was referring to.
Yeah, but
when he does the whole thing, the Pretender.
Yeah, I know, with the bracelets and all that.
Yeah. Who doesn't do that?
I don't care for that. They're Transformers. They don't need human beings. I never even liked the Headmasters because of that.
Yeah, I didn't. And
then when Marvel tried to introduce it and make it make sense, I thought it was even dumber.
I kind of liked what IDW did with it, with Hunter and Sunstreaker. It was interesting, but
I'm sorry, I was just not into the newer IDW Image or whatever. I just couldn't get into it. I just could not. I'm sorry. Marvel did it the best. The 1 through 80 Marvel run was the best. When they did Regeneration, I picked it up. I collected them, but the story was just. Ugh.
I mean,
it wasn't as good.
The Furman stuff wasn't great.
You're talking about Regeneration.
For when he started off
Absolutely.
the IDW miniseries. Yeah, the IDW miniseries stuff, I don't think was great. I think it got better with ongoing. But
everyone tells me to try the newer ones because it's more.
I heard a lot of people like the most recent stuff, the stuff done by what is it? I can't remember the name of the company. It's the guys that did The Walking Dead and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember because they did.
A lot of people seem to really like it, but
I haven't
picked it up yet. I'm probably gonna start picking it up when they start releasing them in like
while you're on that, so it was actually Image Comics that put this out. There, like a little sidetrack. G.I. Joe 1 through 155 was produced by Marvel, and Larry Hama did the majority of it. He continued on to do some of the Image stuff, this, that, and the other, which I kind of cared for, but didn't really care for. But then they did this. It's not an omnibus; it's a compendium. Released by Image, but it's literally all the the Marvel comics, and I love it. And so I'm waiting to see if they do the same thing for the Transformers, because I would love to sit down and read 1 through 80 again, because it was such a good story.
Did IDW
IDW,
not release? I thought they released the Marvel run.
yeah, they did. They did that in they were huge volumes. I think there's like a total of 8. I had like maybe a few of them.
Well, this one would be, they would be able to do it in like 2.
Yeah.
Because this is like one, the G.I. Joe is like 1 through 30, something like that. I'd have to look at it.
Well, I know Transformers. There's no way they could have done it in like 2 volumes. There were just way too many.
There was only 80 episodes, or 80 issues.
Yeah, but they
So you
did them.
could.
They were thick books, so I don't know if they
This
put.
book, this book that I'm looking at is about 3 inches thick for GI Joe.
Well, maybe
But
they
GI
decided
Joe
to
also
split
went
them
for
up.
155. Big difference between 155 and 80. Double. So, but in any case, yeah, I just think that some of the newer comics, with going back to Transformers, I just don't think they don't resonate with me. Like, because even though they take the characters and they push them to extremes, and you have more violence and you have this, and it makes it more down to earth or whatever you want to call it. I like my original run. I like that. And then it's been proven that if you take that original concept with regenerations and continue it, you're still going, meh. It's just not as good. I don't have the same. It doesn't feel the same as the original.
Well,
And that could be because, from the 1980s to now, guess what? I got older. I change. But I didn't feel the same way about it.
well, during the '90s, they did this line called Animorphs, and the books. If any adult would have read the book instead of just thinking they're just for kids, it's a very, very, very dark story.
I never read them. I saw them. They remind me of, because they were in little trade paperbacks is what I saw.
Yep.
Yeah, they were little paperback books with.
And they reminded me of the Choose Your Own Adventure books, which I actually loved. But
every cover had a body horror transformation on the front.
Yeah. But the funny thing is that
they were the staple of book fairs when I was growing up. So I mean,
see, to me, Choose Your Own Adventure was one of them.
Hmm?
And I would always grab those when we did
that
the
and
book fairs
Goosebumps.
and everything.
See,
Goosebumps was before me.
the thing is, I was a little too old for the Animorphs books, and then
Yeah.
the show came out. The show is absolutely atrocious compared to the story that the books put out. I can just tell you right now.
I've never seen one episode.
It's not that great. Now the toys, Sideburn, do you have any Animorph toys? Because I know you like animals.
Unfortunately, no.
I do.
I mean, I would love to. The mutants were supposed to be Animorph toys
Correct.
that were made into Beast Wars toys. I don't have the mutants, unfortunately. They're still on my wish list. But I mean, I think. Did I ever? I feel like I played with like the Tobias like transforming one where he turned from a hawk into a really weird looking human being, but I think that's the only one I ever played with.
I think that's the most notorious one.
All right, I have a couple things to add to that, and I have a question. First of all, the mutants, were they intended for Animorphs? 110%, and I can prove it. Okay? They were. From someone that worked directly on the line, I have the T-Rex, the one that 3 combined into one.
Yeah, it's the alien.
Yeah, I have the prototypes of those with all 3 different sculpted human heads. I have them. But he also had prototypes of all the mutants. And when I asked him why, he said, I was working on Animorphs line, and those were a part of it.
Well, because
So
even the
100%, those were supposed to be a part of it.
well, the mutants have the robot heads,
Right.
which are basically they are just the heads of the aliens from the book series.
Mm-hmm.
So,
So the way it was explained to me is that the human heads were the characters that turned into this, and then these aliens got brought into this and changed into that as well. Okay. But
I could,
no matter how you look at
I'm not
it,
gonna.
because
I could
well-
explain Animorph lore, but we'd just start going.
well, I get it. But I'm just telling you what
We might end up having to do an entire Animorph cast.
we're talking.
sometime.
We're talking. I had lunch with him for an hour or so, and this was one little aspect we talked about. But I never got to ask him, but it wasn't until afterwards that I looked. What's with the little slug little things that come with the Animorphs?
Okay.
What is that?
Quick, so just a super quick rundown of the overarching lore of Animorphs.
Please dummy it down for me.
There is basically an alien invasion on Earth of these slug things, and the slug things go into the brains of people and they turn them into basically slaves. The Centaurian aliens are a race of aliens that have the ability to morph into animals they touch or into biological beings they touch. And there is one in the books that passes that power on to a set of teenagers that then can turn into whatever animal they touch.
Do you think that's why the mutants have two animal modes?
Yeah, because the mutants had the pictures of the heads, the little flip out head I've seen on the mutants looks like the alien,
Yes.
the good guy alien heads. Except for I think there were a few bad guys from that alien race as well. But well, because the slugs I think were also taking over that race, the race of centaur beings, and turned some of them into bad guys.
well,
But yeah, so I think that was supposed to represent like the alien dudes morphing from one creature
and
to another
they
creature.
just knocked that out of the line.
Yeah, and they got bumped out of the line, and someone went like, let's Beast Wars mutants.
Well, two things. One, I can explain, and the other thing I'll tell you. I mean, I've got their resin kits, and I don't know. They don't look like that. The face that flips up looks any different from the production because I have them next to each other. So if you look at a production one, that's what they were intended for. But I do have the others that the faces of the humans, at least for that T-Rex, they look different.
Yeah,
That
I
I do
feel
know.
like because one. So what does the prototype have? Human heads?
It does.
Yeah, because I think the actual release toy was they turned him into the bad guy alien. I think is what the T-Rex was.
I don't know. I mean, they're sitting right here.
Because
Those
wasn't
are
it like all
definitely
red?
human
It was
heads.
completely all red, wasn't it?
I believe so.
I can't remember.
No, the one I have is, well, it's all in resin, so it's like a light blue, and then all the heads are in a poly soft white,
Oh no, yeah.
so they can be snapped on. So maybe they were like, we
No,
might
the
change these
T-Rex.
type things.
Or I guess it was called Trirex.
Yeah,
It was 3 humans. I'm thinking of a different one that was the alien. 'Cause I
Right, but
I think they did an alien one that was sort of scaled to the same.
Well,
as
I'm just telling you, the one I have, the heads are sculpted different.
Yeah.
So it was like an early design. And then when my mutants I have, those sculpts, and they're in resin, they look identical to the production one.
Because maybe they based them off of because the toy line I think was based off of the show, right?
I don't know.
I believe
never saw
so.
the show.
And then maybe they originally were working with like the books because the faces were on the front of every cover.
Well, that's the funny thing. When you actually read the books, the Centaur guys, supposed to be good guys in the show. When you're reading the books, they're not really all good guys because it's a huge intergalactic war is what's going on. It's not just
because the slugs can take over the minds of everybody,
Yeah.
and I think they were also taking over the minds of the malevolent centaur beings.
right.
Well,
But there's also
and
this,
then there's also one little thing that doesn't quite fit. And they're wrong, but these were production, resin kits. But all the mutants were already affixed with the crystals, which Animorphs didn't have. So I don't know how that would put them in the same thing with a different feature that they didn't have unless they tried to explain it some other way.
I thought there were a few that had like an Animorph crystal in it, but maybe not.
So
Wasn't there a completely I thought there was like a completely different crystal that was for
There
the
is.
Animorphs, but
There is. It looks like a DNA crystal or something like that. But the ones I have, they just used existing crystals that they had and put them in there. But the whole idea of them putting them in there for an Animorph line that never had that didn't make sense to me.
maybe it was some weird crossover because of Beast Wars having crystals at the time.
I think that's
don't
what
know.
it was. It had to have been a carryover from that because, like I said,
Well,
Kenner
all I
was
know is the
doing
guy
their
that
thing then.
I got them from said that I was working on Animorphs and these are them.
Yeah.
And those were included. So when you say that you think the proposal of having the mutants a part of the Animorphs, I tend to agree. Because that aligns with what he said. More or less.
Well, yeah, because didn't the mutants release technically during Beast Machines, didn't they?
They came out right before.
Yeah, I believe
It was
so.
like a weird.
They came out at the end of 96?
No,
90.
96 was the first. It would have been 90, 98 or 99.
95 was the end of Beast Wars.
No. 96 was the start of Beast Wars. 96, 97, 98.
No, 90. No, they came out before that.
No.
Beast
95 was the first year.
Yeah,
When
96.
95 was the first year before the cartoon, and then the cartoon was 96 through 98.
When was the Transmetals? 7? 97?
97.
Yeah.
So it
And then-
would have been between those two.
Animorphs says it ended in '99. So
Yeah,
it went all
it
the way
was
up to
after,
'99.
especially since because the crystals on the toys was
Beast
Transmetals
Machines.
2's, and then Beast Machines. Transmetals 2's, I think, also had.
Well, it's funny because even as far back as like Silverbolt had a place for one, but it was painted over.
Beast Machines.
No, I mean I'm talking about Beast Wars Silverbolt. If you look at his chest,
Yeah.
there's a placement for that, but it was omitted. So maybe it was a concept that they were moving towards, but weren't quite ready to release it.
Yeah, Transmetals 2 had. Because wasn't
They did.
the crystal in? It was in like Cheetor's shoulder, I think.
Yeah, it was a spark. So then that's when these came out, and you had Animorphs. That's where I had a problem. I was like, well, why did these have it and those don't? When it was supposed to be in the same line. And I think it was just maybe a running change to make sure it fit in with, because they weren't going to use it with Animorphs. They threw it in with this type thing.
I think the Animorphs toy line was basically failing at that point. So
Right.
Yeah, it wasn't doing good.
And Beast Wars was coming in, so they I would assume that the crystal is just a pivot, but who knows?
Right. But I mean, that's the funny thing. I got them, so they're
Yeah.
It's kind of like it puts a timestamp but it puts a timestamp on something that we really don't know why. So it's kind of,
to me this
doesn't
looks
really
like
help.
an
It
engineering
doesn't help.
crossover, honestly. That's what
Yeah.
it seems to me. Which is cool. I mean, if it wasn't for Animorphs, we wouldn't have gotten some of these weird things too. So
It's funny you
it's
should say
interesting.
that because when I bought these, and for people that don't know how things happen, a lot of it happens in life by random. So you have a person that's worked on this line that has all these sketches, drawings, pre-production stuff, hard copies, everything, and he's like, "I'm out. I'm gonna get rid of it." And he gets in contact with someone. Well, then that someone gets in contact with like 10 people, and then everyone's like, "We're all interested," and we all go, "All right, I want this, and then all of a sudden everyone wants the same thing, and blah blah blah, and I'll pay this, blah blah blah. And then it came down to the Animorph stuff, and everyone was like, "I don't want that," and I'm like, "I'll take it."
Well, I mean,
And
it was a strange time too for a lot of this stuff.
Well, hang on, listen. And they were like, "I'm buying this, I'm buying that," and I'm like, "All right, well, he's local to me, I'll pick it up and we'll do the deal and I'll give you your stuff, but no one wants this Animorph stuff." They were like, "No." So when I went there, I told him, I said, you've got that Animorph stuff, right? He goes, "Yeah." I said, "I'll take it. What do you want?" He told me a price. I said, "Yeah, I'll take it." And when he gave it to me, the mutants were in there as well.
Yeah.
And no one knew. And I'm like, you take a chance, it really is. And for anyone that, especially with the pre-production stuff, it really is just being at the right place at the right time. And always ask questions. And I say this for anything. If you go to a flea market and the guy's got like Optimus Prime there, yeah, like, I'm interested in that, whatever. Do you have parts? Do you have others? Just ask them, because you may not. I mean, yeah, I got all this junk that no one wants, and it's like all the parts you needed to complete your G1. You don't know. Always ask. Always.
Yeah, that time period was it was like I feel like you don't really get much of that anymore. The weird like pre-production stuff, because everything's done more with like CAD programs and stuff like that, right? But it always interested me, and with things like Megatron and Optimal Optimus and Tigerhawk all still having the bays for the pilot drivers, or the spark drivers, right? Which was an abandoned concept from their early designs, but they still have it in their toys.
Can I ask you something?
Yeah.
In regards to that, so I guess it would be considered Transmetal 3 Megatron.
Megatron was considered Transmetal 2?
The Dragon?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because he was in the show, he was a product of G1 Megatron Spark and the Transmetal 2 driver.
Sure. So he has a little chassis area with a little cockpit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever see a driver in there?
Not in mine.
No.
I know originally it was supposed to represent Megatron, the original Megatron Spark, and it was supposed to look like Megatron.
Hang on. Cryotech.
Mm-hmm.
Cryotech was the same mold, so it has the same cockpit, right?
Yep.
Did you ever see a driver inside that?
I don't think I ever paid attention to my Cryotech, to be honest.
Would you like to? Because they did.
I have to go look at. I'll have to look at mine one day when I see mine again.
Well, that's the difference between a 2-digit and a 3-digit toy. But yes, they actually released a Cryotech with a driver in it. So explain that one to me, because I haven't figured it out.
Yeah, it's weird because you wouldn't think.
Exactly.
Yeah, it clearly has a driver on the inside of
You
it.
wouldn't think any of that would exist, but there
Well,
it
it's
is.
sitting on my shelf right across
Yeah.
from me. So I know it did. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to. I haven't seen my Cryotech in 2 years, so
Now the truth of the matter is for Tiger Hawk,
yeah.
I have not seen one.
Yeah, because it definitely wasn't in like.
But why would they put the little seat there with the little? It doesn't make any sense. So, I think at some point they were trying to put drivers in those,
Well, they were.
and
So
some got released.
the concept art for the three of them had those sections drawn where, like, Megatron had a little G1 looking. It wasn't like it didn't have all the gun kibble, but it had a very G1 like Megatron looking head, little driver, and then I think Optimus was supposed to have something that represented like G1 Optimus sitting in his. It was supposed to sit in the cockpit of the jet mode.
Well, I also have a pre-production Optimal Optimus.
Yeah.
And it does not have a driver.
It,
So I'm like,
see, I thought it was
at different stages. They do change things.
it was supposed to be like an abandoned, and that's where I'm surprised that Cryotech even had it, because my understanding
it was actually
like
released
abandoned.
that way.
Yeah, it was like abandoned before they ever even got to completed figures.
Right.
But and then I think
what-
Tiger Hawk was supposed to have it was supposed to represent Tigatron or Airways or Tyler.
All I can tell you is that two things. One, the one I have, it is loose, but it does have the driver in it.
Yeah.
Guarantee you can look at it. It's never been tampered with. My understanding is, remember when they had the Transmetals where the Japanese one had a sticker on the back that was different?
Yeah, they had a
And
tampered
some
wrap
things were different. Okay,
Yeah.
I think the drivers are the ones that came from that batch. I can't prove that because it seems that all the mold differences and everything came from that first batch, and it would make sense that after that was released in Japan with those stickers, they changed them. But that's just a thought. I don't know.
I thought they come out much later in Japan, though.
But if you look at like the Tiger Hawk had different color and everything,
Mhm.
and it was changed quickly, and it would lead me to believe that it was a first batch. Now it may have been released later, but I think it was a first batch, and they corrected it.
When they
As-
I was about to say, when they re-released this stuff in the early 2000s, what did they do any changes to them then for the Universe line?
Well, they never had drivers,
I didn't know if they
and they
tried to.
recolored it, so any of the color differences would be obsolete at that point.
Interesting. I never really paid that much attention to it, so I wasn't sure.
It got me to thinking with the depth charge eye change from the Japanese version to the US version and how hard it was to find that. I was like, why? Is it that small of a market? Evidently, when they released those at the beginning with the eye variants, it was a short market.
Well,
And
the
then if you
metals.
look at Cryotech and how short it is to find the driver, it would make sense that they did the same thing.
Because the metals line, I think the metals line like, was it a limited production line? I know that when they did Beast Wars Returns, which was Beast Machines in Japan, all of those are
Correct.
limited runs, and they're a real pain. And then you know what to
That was
get.
different. That was different.
Yeah.
We're talking about marketing the same toy in two different areas, but when they, in my opinion, when they first came out, they were marketing the box for the US, but they slapped Japanese stickers on it, and they were first run figures. And then when they decided to change it, that's what we got. And that is why there's a difference in the eyes. There's a difference in having a driver and stuff like that.
And
Can I prove it? No.
And Takara, because Takara would have been the one developing all the molds.
And they would make the changes.
Anyways, right? Yeah.
No, it was still. Well, that was before. Not Korea. Where are they made now? Vietnamese.
Or Vietnam.
Oh yeah, Vietnam.
Yep. So I'm not sure if they. I still believe the molds came from Japan. They were marketed when they were sent over. They were changed, which means that the ones that were marketed or made in Japan, marketed in a smaller batch, had differences, which would be the eye changes and the driver.
I mean, it would make sense.
That makes sense to me.
Takara was always wanting to go above and beyond on tooling. When Hasbro got it, they were always like, "Nope, that costs too much."
I mean, look at springs, rounding of missiles, sharp edges, and all that. The
different materials used
the
for
codes
things.
for the U.S. are different than they were in Japan.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
so it all makes sense to me, but what is this? What am I talking about? I'm talking about one idiot just explaining himself without any facts. I don't know.
Well,
I just know I have them.
I
I know what they are. Do I know if they're before or after? No, I don't.
I would think they were probably before, because Takara did a lot of.
Well, I think the only thing that doesn't
for Hasbro for quite some time.
The only thing that doesn't line up is just that I believe Metals was released a whole year, if not 2 years after.
Before?
No, after the U.S. run, because in Japan at the time they did the original Beast Wars, which just went up to the end of the first season, and then as they were waiting, that's where they got Neo, or that's where they got Beast Wars 2nd and Beast Wars Neo.
Okay,
while they waited.
Beast Wars, Metals. What is different from the U.S.?
And what do you mean, the toy line or the actual show? Line. The toy line in Japan had, instead of the name of the character on them, it said Cybertron or it said Destron on it, I think.
Okay. In the US, we don't care.
Yeah.
What else?
Color changes.
Okay, you make it more pink or silver or whatever. We don't care. What else?
But other than that, like, I don't know about all the different mold changes that probably exist.
I get it. But if you made something that was sharper that might poke a kid's eye out, we might care about that.
Yeah.
If you decide to put a driver into a brand we say has no human faction, we change that.
Well, and
so
I think
that
I
part
think what would
I
line
don't
up,
think would. No, that part would line up.
Well, no. I'm saying that part to me lines up. Your logic lines up to me in that if they did a run before they had the cartoon, they wouldn't know that those pieces aren't part of the toy anymore, right?
You talking about the driver?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it would make sense for them to run it with the driver, or to have the driver and not know that the driver was an abandoned concept in the West.
So that would make it an early concept piece.
Yeah.
Much like Diaclone.
Absolutely.
It seemed like it was at least in the mold for Megatron.
Right, but
maybe it never made
the driver for that. So what I'm saying is that you have these pieces here sitting here, and they're like, we're going to push them out, and they do, and then Hasbro goes, no, we're not going to have drivers in there. and then they cut the drivers. That doesn't mean it wasn't released, because it was. But that
And
means
Takara
it's a
might
limited
have-
release.
Yeah, Takara might have produced the toys well before they released the toys too.
I get it, but I mean, I've had people tell me that if you have a Cryotech with a driver, that's pre-production, and I'm like, that's BS.
Like Cryotech was released in Car Robots,
Yeah.
I get
which
it,
was
but
much later.
I'm just saying. Still, they're saying that's pre-production because it was never intended to have a driver, and I'm like, no.
That's what did Cryotech get? I don't know if Cryotech did it get a Japanese release.
Well, yes. And what I'm telling you is that it's not a pre-production piece. It's not nothing special. It's just an early release that had that.
Which would make sense because, like Brett was saying, rounded missiles, safety things. How many
Exactly.
times did they change the material that something's made here in the States versus what it's made in Japan? Vector Prime, primary, like the wings for the Japanese one are rigid plastic. The one for the US were floppy, rubbery plastic from Energon. So, yeah, there were huge changes they did between the two. I mean, those are humongous changes, really, to me. Especially if you're changing out the materials something's made out of. Because, it's got to be softer plastic, but is that softer plastic going to last longer?
Well,
no. Did he lock up?
I think he's just thinking really, really, really hard.
No, he's not moving at all.
No, he locked up. I was making a joke.
I think we lost him.
And he was
And the
just
wiki
about to
says
say,
the wiki does
there
say
he
that
did.
Cryotech-
Now he's
it
saying
was the
something
Cryotech-
profound.
Do you hear? Do you see? Do you guys hear me?
You were locked up. We were
Yeah, you
making
guys
fun of
froze
you.
up. Dude, I actually could hear you guys, but like Jason's video froze up. Yeah, well, I was looking at the TF wiki, and it says Takara had a U.S. edition release of Cryotech, which was in the Hasbro packaging with Japanese stickers on it.
That's
And
what I'm
that,
talking about.
that is the version that comes with the pre-Earth Megatron.
Thank
And
you.
it's part figure.
I'm vindicated.
I would only my
Yeah, but you have to
assumption
remember,
would
I'm
be,
54 years old. I remembered that. That's amazing.
my assumption would be that there's probably millions of little Megatrons in a landfill somewhere that they
Oh,
that
absolutely.
was part of the mold that they just threw out every time they made a Megatron.
Actually, I can tell you probably what they did is they probably plugged them.
Yeah, probably.
Because usually when it comes to certain toys, when we get them, they don't come with a certain accessory. If it's going to be released here in the States, they're going to just plug that off and not even shoot the extra plastic because it's just a waste. It's easier for them to plug a hole in a mold to save the cost than it would be to
Look, I like to
do
think
it and
that
then
there's
chop it off and throw it in.
Honestly depends on where you're at in the production.
I like to think that
Dude.
if I dig in the right spot, somewhere in a landfill, I'm gonna find a bunch of little Megatrons.
Yeah, you'll find
I like
that
to
in
think
the
that.
rare Nintendo that
Yeah.
like destroyed.
And I'll find the Atari.
What-
The
Yeah, yeah,
Atari.
yeah. Yeah.
While you're
ET.
digging, give me some ET cartridges, please.
Right. So two things.
I need one to
First
set up
of
here with
all-
my centipede.
Yeah, first of all, two things. One, I misspoke. I'm not 54, I'm 45. So, that's the first thing. And the second thing is that all the little pilots for Cryotech, I'm sure they have, and they're probably in some other toy that they just pushed it off and put it into because they can't waste. You don't want to
See,
waste.
that's why
That's money.
my Cryotech definitely does not have it because I definitely have a US Cryotech.
Well, I can tell you right now, mine definitely does.
Well, you have a Japanese Cryotech.
And
I'm gonna
also,
come- You're
And
gonna leave
also,
it to
the funny
me in your
thing is-
will, right?
Well, there's also. We'll get back. We talked about this before. Anytime you have transmetal, what do you think of? Well, there's 3 colors.
Yep.
There's always 3 colors.
I have a light blue air razor. I have a pink air razor.
Thank you. Yeah, there's blue, there's pink, and there's purple, and all that. Now, everyone's eye is different, but there's 3 variations. I can tell you that my Cryotech with the driver, I'll look him again, is a lighter color, which would gear towards the pink. But I'll also tell you, I'll just look at the color. Nope, because the colors of the plastic changed just as these things were being pushed out. So you might have a driver in a dark blue or purple, and you might have a driver in a pink one, whatever. 2 things happening at 2 different times doesn't mean it's exactly. And that means there's variations, which means there's more variations out there for people to go for. Have fun, disperse, and talk amongst yourselves about it. Wonderful.
Look, I have a creamy white Dinobot too, and I have a yellow Dinobot too.
Yeah, but was it yellowed because it made it that way, or you like this?
No, it was made that
don't
way.
even get me
Yeah, it was
started
made
about
that
the new plastic and the yellowing crap. Oh my god,
Oh, yeah.
we'll get
That's
into
those aren't very
that's horrible.
We'll
Hey, look,
save that
be
for a
honest, like-
different cast. We'll talk about
They're-
degradation later
All
on.
I'm gonna say is my G1 took decades to yellow. You guys are doing it in months. What the hell?
It's called inferior materials.
No dip.
Well, since we've been going for about an hour and 31 talking about all this
Yeah, we got on
craziness,
we got
we
on
did
a
good.
tangent. I
We
don't
did.
know.
All I can
You
say
know what?
is
That's
I was
fine.
supposed to
That's
dip.
fine.
I was supposed to leave early. I'm already in trouble.
He
Thanks,
was supposed
guys.
to leave early. You were supposed to leave early, and then you turned this into an Animorphs
I didn't
and
do it.
Cryotech talk.
Do not blame me. Show watch the video. It's not my fault. It's yours.
It could be mine. Sorry.
Thank you.
It was a little bit Jason. He did steer us into
just a little bit.
Animorphs.
Just a little bit. Hey, that's okay though. Who
Information
really
is
talks
good.
about Animorphs? Not very many people, and they're great. They're actually crazy little toys. Go check them out. But anyway, since we've been going for a while, I gotta get going myself. So, thank you guys for all tuning in to this week's of Plasticast. We will be back again, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 7 Central. Be on Sunday again. I'm out of town tomorrow. That's why we're here a day early. So, I'm gonna go ahead and let Megamus say goodbye.
I'll say goodbye, and I will say, if anyone wants to think about any topic that you want these 3 idiots to talk about, keep it to yourself, because we're going to come up with something different and better. I dare you to come up with something better, because we'll do it. Bye.
Sideburn.
Next week we're talking about Mega Man.
What the hell is
Hey,
that?
You know, we
Exactly.
that would probably be a cast for, me and Sideburn.
Yeah,
Probably
Maybe
could talk
not.
about that
I
one
don't
for
know
a
anything
while.
about that crap.
I'm throwing something out there that just
Astro Boy, man, Astro Boy.
that Megamus has no idea what we're talking about. Yeah, we're gonna go all the way back to Astro Boy.
Nada. Nothing. Nope.
I'm very surprised, Megamus. I'm very surprised on Astro Boy. That's one of the first mecha out there. So, but anyway, thank you guys for tuning in. We'll catch you guys next week, and guys, enjoy the collecting, have fun, and don't be at each other's throats. And congratulations to those who decide to back the Lyle Kaiser. Hope you guys enjoy that toy.
And wish him a happy birthday.
Yes, it's my birthday. It's my birthday. Thank
Happy
you.
birthday.
Good
No.
time to end it.
I'm ending by